What's up, guys and gals? It's the Tyrant here, and gotcha, April Fools! Oh yeah, the title. Hold on, before you hit that dislike button or the report button or whatever, you know, claiming spam or clickbait, before you do that, it's actually not as far-fetched as you may think. I actually didn't make that up. I remember telling you guys last week, if you recall, that I was doing an interview with Masters 1337, who is the lead developer behind the Halo SPV3 mod. And during that interview, we talked a little bit about the state of the current franchise and where it may go from here. That basically 343 has kind of dug themselves into a hole plot-wise with the whole Cortana thing and her taking over the galaxy with using Forerunner technology and the domain that was already there. I think that was built by the Precursors, but they still refer to it as the Forerunner domain in the game. So our thoughts are that there isn't going to be a numerical Halo 6 so much as there's going to be another installment that's a lot more expansive. Sort of like Destiny, but not at the same time. And what I mean by that is a game that's more open-ended. You know, I talked about this in one of my other videos, or at least probably a couple of my other videos, where a really neat idea to incorporate lots of different things into one game is to not have a certain set of missions that you have to go through to complete it, but rather leave it open-ended, allow the player to choose their path, choose their story, kind of like back in the old days, back in the 90s where you read books, where it sort of allowed you to choose different paths that a character would take or have them make different choices that would result in a different ending. So again, I have no proof of this, it's just speculation based on what we've seen so far. There could be what I've sort of called this Halo reclamation for their final game, so that it could, you know, incorporate not just, you know, the Cortana story, but the Banished as well, which is obviously the quote-unquote Covenant faction that we see in Halo Wars 2, and quite possibly even the Flood, which I've talked about in other videos as well. So I think that that is a possibility. More than likely in a couple of months, we will have some sort of telling about that. I'm sure that we'll see something at E3 this year because, you know, by all accounts, Halo, the next major Halo title should be out by 2018. So that is my thoughts on that. I didn't mean to throw you off too bad, but I had to get my little April Fool's prank in there, at least in part. I also want to take a second just to, you know, I've seen these Q&As grow and I'm really enjoying them, and it seems like you guys are too. So thank you. Thank you for asking the questions. Thank you for watching the videos. Thank you for your support. It really does mean a lot to me. I'm having a lot of fun interacting with you, and I hope you're feeling the same way. Especially this particular week, I'm glad I have your support because something very interesting happened this morning. So I don't know how many of you have heard of this. I've been a partner with a company called Maker Studio for about 5 years now. In 2014, they were bought out by Disney for, I think it was about $500 million. It was a lot of money. And this morning I woke up and saw that none of my videos were monetized or anything like that anymore. And I thought, honestly, especially since this was April 1st, that it was YouTube playing one of their epic practical jokes on their community. We've seen them do this in the past. So I thought, okay, that's it. So I checked the email account that is linked to my Maker account, and essentially, no, it's not a joke. They actually sent emails over the course of the last month stating that they will be purging thousands of YouTube accounts, or content creators to be more specific, from their organization. To be precise, they purged 55,000 YouTubers from their organization, and I just happen to be one of them. Apparently they left under 1,000 left, and it was because they had layoffs and so forth. So right now, I'm answering directly to Google instead of having Disney as a third party. So it's interesting to go through this. I'm a little worried because, as I've mentioned in previous videos, this is my full-time job now. After my accident in 2015, I can't do what I used to be able to do. So I'm hoping this ultimately works out for the best. So keep me in your thoughts, guys. Hopefully it'll work out okay. So let's get to it. Our Q&A this week, I picked out 10 questions. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with this or don't know how it works, basically, if you want a question to be submitted, you submit it in the comment section of that week's video. So, for example, if you want your question answered in next week's video, you leave it in the comment section for this week's video. And we've had a lot of people do that. I'm really happy. I'm really excited about it. So, let's get started. The first question for this week is from Skiles84. And he asks, Mythic Tyrant, what is the most satisfying Halo achievement you have unlocked across all the Halo games and why? This is a really great question. So I'm going to tell you right now that there really is no achievement that just made me jump up and down whenever I got it. What really did get me excited, though, which personally for me falls under the same category, are the medals from the individual Halo games. You may remember that this pretty much started back in Halo 3, where you could look at your service record on Bungie.net, and there were medals that you could earn in-game. And to me, those had more stature to it. Those were something that, had more merit in terms of what you'd accomplished in the game. And so the one that I was first proud of was the Killionaire. There are going to be a lot of ranked players out there who are going to hate me for this because I got my Killionaire in Griffball. Keep in mind that Griffball was not a regular playlist back then. It was just something that happened on occasion, sort of like Living Dead. But when I tried for this achievement multiple times with the hammer, I'd get to like 8 or 9 and then get taken out by the enemy team or even my own teammates sometimes. But when I finally got it, I was so excited. But it still didn't hold up the candle to my favorite medal that I've gotten from that game, and that's Slice and Dice. For those of you who aren't familiar with this medal, you have to kill 10 people in a row without dying, without using other weapons, with the energy sword. That is not an easy feat because remember, when you take someone down with the energy sword, when you strike them down, that takes away approximately 10% of your sword's energy, which means you only have 10 tries to begin with. So that can be kind of stressful, and I tried, and one day I finally just happened to nail it on the multiplayer map, The Pit. And what's interesting about that is, so I had to basically camp the sword spawn, and you know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the pit and the sword room. And after you've gotten about 3 or 4 kills, the enemy team starts picking up on what you're doing. And so they'll make much more aggressive attempts to take you down. I still somehow managed to do it. I got my 10th kill, got the medal, and they got killed immediately right afterwards. They probably called me a camping son of a bitch. And technically, to get that medal, yes, I was. I am guilty of it. It's a legitimate strategy. But I was so proud of that and really happy, and it was in a ranked playlist on top of that, so that was pretty cool. Excellent question. And you know what, Skiles? Tell me what your favorite achievement was. I'm really curious myself. Was it an achievement? Was it a medal? Let me know in the comments below because I'm really curious. Our next question comes from Arc48. He is a regular member here. It's always good to hear from him. Arc asks, how would you write Halo 6's story if you were the lead writer of 343? I might have Master Chief wake up and pretend Halo 5 was just a nightmare. Right. In all seriousness, though, like I said, I kind of touched on this before. I would keep it open-ended because I'd want the player to choose their ending. So yes, Cortana would still be the main enemy, but I would have it so that the Didac, which was digitalized, I think, in Halo Escalation, I think that's what it was called, is really in control of her, and that Cortana really did die in Halo 4. That death moved me a lot, and it kind of sucked that they brought her back in Halo 5, and more so, they brought her back as a villain. So I definitely have that as an option, but I'd like for the player to be able to visit other Halo rings for strategic advantages or strategic points that they're trying to take, and maybe even encounter the Flood. In other videos, I've talked about the Flood possibly making a return in Halo 6, or whatever the next major Halo game is, because to me, that would sort of bring the franchise to a full circle. We haven't seen the Flood in a while. It would be kind of cool to fight him again. Maybe new types of Flood would be available. Not those ranged forms. Do not like those guys. But it really would be cool to bring them back. And having a story that branches out to possibly multiple conclusions would be the perfect opportunity to flesh that out. So, Ark, it's always good to hear from you. Thank you. Excellent question. Our next question comes from Kyle Miller. And he asks, what made you love Halo and what made you start your channel? That's a really cool question, Kyle. So, believe it or not, and I've talked about this a long time ago, so some of my newer subscribers probably won't know this. My brother got me into Halo, and he had talked about this, and prior to that, I was stuck on Resident Evil. That's all I ever played. I had played games like Doom, games like Ice and Fire. I don't know if you ever heard of that, but it's a Mac first-person shooter that came out around the same time that Doom did. And so when he told me about it, he told me about going through the ship and killing aliens and things like that, I thought it really wouldn't be a lot different, so I wasn't that excited about it until I played it for the first time. When I stepped outside on that Halo ring, and I'd never seen an environment so vast, I got up on that Forerunner structure where you're trying to hold off different teams of Covenant that are coming down through the dropships, the Spirit dropships, and it reminded me of Starship Troopers, that scene where they're all at the base and they're being surrounded by just an entire legion of those bugs. And it got me so excited. And as I played the mission more and played the game further in, it just got me hooked. The plot this was the first time that I played a first-person shooter and it had a real plot to it. Doom didn't really have a real plot. It had a backstory that you could read, but it wasn't the same. This was something that played out like a movie, but had all these different ways you could play the missions. It just felt like it was the most open world FPS I'd ever played at that time. So he's the one who got me into it. As far as the channel is concerned, that goes back a little bit further. I started writing Mythic guides back when Halo 3 came out. What inspired me to do that was I had read the Halo 2 Legendary walkthrough on halo.bungie.org by Mike Miller. He did an excellent job. It was the first time I'd seen both written text and videos incorporated on the same page. And it was impressive to see his work. I loved it, and I sort of took a page out of his book. And after Halo 3 had been out for a while, and I noticed that there had been no Legendary walkthrough written on halo.bungie.org, I messaged the site head, Louis Wu, and asked him if I could do it. And he said, yeah, absolutely. But then as time went by and I started writing it, I came across the Mythic Challenge. It had been brought up in a Bungie weekly update. They didn't call it Mythic back then, they called it Slazo, which is single-player Legendary All Skulls on. And no one had really legitly done it. I think there was one person at the time that may or may not have, but there were people who basically went through and did the save and quit method, and so only 2 people had even gotten that far. So I made it my personal mission to go through each and every one of them and to basically claim that mantle. So I went to Louis Wu again and said, why don't we up the ante here and do a Legendary All Skulls guide on instead, because for me Halo 3 was a bit easier than Halo 2 or Halo Combat Evolved. I got through it a lot quicker, so I wanted to up the stakes a little bit. And he kind of paused for a second. He's like, are you sure you want to do this? And I said, yeah, absolutely I want to do this. Let's give it a shot. So I did it. Bungie really seemed to take to it. They loved it. They supported my work. And after a while, I thought to myself, I saw some of my colleagues starting their own YouTube channels. I had never been that big into YouTube. I didn't really have the means to capture, video game content. And so, aside from the file share option on Bungie.net, so finally, when it became available through the file share option, I said, you know what? It's time that I start doing this. At that time, I had already done Mythic walkthroughs for Halo 3, Halo 3 ODST, and Halo Reach. I said I'd like to do just standard Legendary walkthroughs for those games, and that way not everyone's going to look at it and be like, no, that's impossible, I can't do it. I would take the strategies from those Mythic guides and apply them to Legendary and try to make the best Legendary walkthroughs anyone had ever seen. So that's how I got my channel started, and I've been working on it ever since. I retroactively went back and did all the other Halo games too. The only one that I still have not done is Spartan Strike, and my plan is to get on that very soon. Obviously, there's no difficulty scale on that one; it's just straight through. But I've had a good time, or I've had a lot of fun doing it. It seems like my fans appreciate it, my followers, my viewers. They seem to appreciate it, and as long as they do, I'll keep doing it. So that's a great question, Kyle. Thank you. And if you're thinking of starting your own YouTube channel, that's a great idea, and I think you should. The next question comes from Tiash0. I apologize if I butchered that name. And this question is, what's your position on the old versus new movement system debate? Well, I'll be honest with you here. I like the new movement system, and we've seen different iterations, not just through Bungie, but so of course the original was you go around, you have the standard moving in different directions, and there really wasn't much to it other than that. And then Reach comes along, and then you have Sprint available, but only as an armor ability. Then Halo 4 comes along, and it's no longer an armor ability, it's a standard feature, but you can't do it indefinitely. You can only do it for a certain amount of time. Now fast forward to Halo 5, and you have the Thruster Pack, which allows you to, or helps you at least, sprint indefinitely. That I actually prefer to what they had before, because you don't have to worry about timing it anymore. you just do as it is, pretty much. You can just do what you want to, sprint as long as you want to. Do I like this system better than the old one? Considering where the games are now, yes, I think that's more effective. I didn't like limited sprint. The sprint debate is already a big one. There are a lot of people who don't like it, but with the direction that Halo seems to be heading, it does seem to fit the platform. I'm glad they nixed armor abilities. I could not stand those. The thruster pack is pretty cool in general, just because you can ram through walls, you can do your ground pound option. You have little thrust bursts that you can use as well, just to get across maps quicker. And it seems to pay off in Halo 5 because not just the campaign, but the multiplayer missions are generally a lot larger. And so it helps you get from one point to another a lot quicker. So in my opinion, I'm fine with the current system. It is a different game than what we're used to, and so for what it is, I support it. So that's an excellent question. Thank you. My main man, Legendary Smile, is here asking the question. So I've mentioned Legendary a few times on this site before. Essentially, he is a guy who is a member of my Mythic community. He's one of my strongest members. He is one of the few people out there who's actually conquered Halo 5 on Mythic, as well as Halo 2. And so that is not an easy thing to do. So he's got of course he has his own YouTube channel. Be sure to check it out. Again, he is in the description below, or in the comment section, so just click his name and it'll take you right to it. He's got some awesome work there. So Legendary asked, if you were asked to do something like a Summer Mythic Recon challenge, like back in the days of Halo 3, in the Master Chief Collection, in which you had to create a multi-game playlist of missions and the skulls for each mission, what missions would you definitely include, and if desired, what skulls would you leave out? So for those of you who aren't familiar with this, back in the days of Halo 3, I did something called the Mythic Recon Challenge. Back then, Recon armor was not something that you could obtain in-game. It was something that could only be issued by Bungie. I had managed to get Recon armor shortly after I completed the Halo 3 Mythic walkthrough. Still can't believe to this day that I got Recon from that. I'm really grateful that they did that, but more so, I created a contest a year later that said, basically we would do a challenge every week, and we would choose a different mission every week. And anyone who could complete that mission on Mythic difficulty, basically they'd have to have both proof in their stats, as well as have a film in their file share for it. Anyone who could do that would be put into a pool, and their name would, one person each week would be randomly picked, and that person would be submitted to Bungie, and that person would receive Recon. So basically, you could get Recon for doing Mythic difficulty, but for only a limited time in Halo 3, and of course it was randomly chosen. And it was a pretty big hit. You know, we had thousands of people do it. It was based on me to actually put those names into a database and select one randomly. So it was a lot of fun. It seemed to get a lot of people interested in the concept of Mythic or Lazo or whatever you want to call it. And it's something that I could foresee in the future. In terms of Mythic, the Master Chief Collection, here's the thing. I would have to leave out Halo Combat Evolved and Halo 2, mainly because those skulls in those two games do not line up with the rest of the franchise. We're used to 13 specific skulls from Halo 3 onward. Halo 1 and 2 sort of mixed it up a little, and they even took it a step further in the anniversary editions and put different skulls entirely from what were in the original games. Obviously, the original Halo didn't have skulls, but Halo 2 did, and the Master Chief Collection version is different from that. So in terms of which ones I would pick for a Mythic Recon challenge, I guess that would mean it's narrowed down to Halo 3 and ODST. I would definitely do Floodgate just because it's the easiest one and it would allow people to get their feet wet. I would do Savo Highway just because there's a lot of speed running involved and I think people would like it. Cortana is the one that people would dread the most, but surprisingly is somewhere in the middle in terms of Mythic. It's not that bad, but it's something that I think people would feel accomplished if they managed to actually take it down. But definitely I would have to include the Ark as well as Coastal Highway from Halo 3 ODST. The Ark was in Halo 3, of course, because those are the hardest missions for us. And if you really do want to get that challenge down, I would say anyone who could beat those should deserve Recon or something like that by default. Obviously, Recon is something isn't something that's issued by 343 anymore. I'm not even sure if it's in Halo 5 at all, but if I could do that, those are some of the missions I would definitely include. In terms of skulls, I would admit, I think that one's obvious. Blind. Blind doesn't belong in Mythic difficulty. It's not that it makes the game more difficult. It's that you can't even see your arms. So it takes you out of the immersion of the game. I would be fine if they took away the reticle, the health bar, anything related to your HUD, but you still should be able to see your weapon and your body. I think that would be important. So excellent question, Legendary. Our next question comes from Colin Jones, and he asks, do you think Halo Wars 1 and 2 and Spartan Ops and Spartan Strike could work as an FPS, and if it did, would you play it? I don't know. The thing of it is, with Halo Wars and Halo Wars 2, these are large missions in general that take a lot, well, they cover a lot of ground, and part of it is based on the strategy of you being able to control your own troops. I think Halo Wars and Halo Wars 2 would not work well as a first-person shooter. Spartan's Assault and Spartan Strike probably would, simply because you're still just one player controlling the board. Those could definitely work. Would I play it? Absolutely. It's a Halo game. I would at least give it a try. So that's an excellent question, Colin. Thank you. The next question comes from that guy across the street. I'm getting Disturbia vibes here. So his question is, do you think a Halo game would work if it's merged both the FPS aspect from Halo 2 and 3 as well as the Halo Wars style RTS? I'm guessing by this you mean, could you have a sky view and then get down to first person level? The short answer is no. I don't think it would work. We have games that do something similar to it, like Ghost Recon and Rainbow Six, where you control squads of troops. And of course, recently in Halo 5, you get a squad as well. In terms of controlling troops by the masses, it just doesn't seem like it'd be something that would work out that well. It's an interesting idea. I imagine, though, that would put a lot of pressure on the graphic system. Either that or you'd have to have graphics really watered down. And then again, you'd have to worry about controlling all these troops while being in first person. And I just don't see that being a thing. But it's still an interesting concept, so good question. Thank you. Our next question comes from Arcos Trevelyan. He's another site regular here, and I love his name. Fun fact, Trevelyan, the reason why I love that name so much is, remember I told you about my film Shrine that I was working on, and still kind of am. You never know, maybe I can get the funds to make it happen. But anyway, the character that I play, the main character, his last name is also Trevelyan. So good to meet a fellow Trevelyan. His question is, do you have a favorite character from each faction in Halo, or even a favorite character overall? Absolutely. My favorite character by far is Cortana. Master Chief never really seemed like a character to me so much as a personification of the player. Cortana has always been smart, witty, she's always kind of there for you, she's always sort of your guiding light, and she's partially for me, she's always been the humor to the game, at least for some of the Halo games, not for all of them. Cough, Halo 4, cough. So, she's always been my favorite character. I've got a little statue of her back from the days where McFarlane Toys was making their Halo figures. I've got a Series 1 Cortana. I think I've actually got all the Series 1 figures. But yeah, she's definitely my favorite character. What's your favorite character, Trevelyan? Let me know in the comments. Our next question comes from Cryptosportium. And his question is, do you think there will be a marathon tie-in with the upcoming games? No, I do not. Marathon was a Bungie exclusive series that was not bought by Microsoft. And since Halo is now in the hands of Microsoft and 343 Industries, I do not think there will be a tie-in. I think that would be copyright infringement in favor of Bungie. And so that would not work out at all. I can imagine corporate lawyers having a field day with that. But it's still a good question and a good concept. Good to see an old school Bungie fan here. And our final question of the day comes from Greek Goddess 48. And Greek Goddess asks, hey Tyrant, I want to get into the gaming industry mainly because I don't really like working with people. And would prefer to work independently. What advice would you give someone who wants to get into gaming as a career? This is an interesting question. So you want to get into gaming as a career. This can be viewed as one of two things. You mean you want to get into gaming as a career as someone who develops games, Or do you want to become a content creator and play video games for ad revenue? So let's touch on the gaming part first, where you want to become a game developer. First of all, you will be working with people, period. You'll be working with other teams, you'll be working with other developers, you'll be working with people who do different art styles. You know, you're going to be working with a lot of coordinators in the developing team itself. You will not be working alone. If anything, you will be very tightly involved with other teams of individuals. There is no working alone. The closest that you can come in that area is if you develop maybe your own game app, but even then, you have to work with marketing engineers, you have to work with corporate lawyers so that you can get your stuff across, you need to work with publishers, so you will never work alone. And even then, you have to work with critics as well so that you can get feedback of your game and make it better. You can't ignore critics at all. You can't ignore people who try to give you tips about your game. So you're always going to be constantly working with people no matter what side of that you're on. But I'm assuming here that you mean you want to become a content creator. You want to play video games for ad revenue. And this is a very interesting field. It's very widely assumed that content creators often work alone, that they sit in their own, private rooms, and they play video games and they upload videos, and that's it. And I can tell you that could not be further from the truth. If you think for a second that people like me don't work with other people or interact with other people, that could not be further from the truth. My job, basically, is to work with other people, and let me explain sort of how this works. So, in the community itself, so let's just say you upload content. Your number one people that you need to impress, your number one group of people are the people who support you. You can't ignore these people. These are folks who take valuable time out of their day to watch your content. These are people who support you. These are ones who enjoy your stuff just like you enjoy your favorite TV show. And you can't do that by working alone and shutting out the world. Some of these people are going to be your best friends. And I don't mean that in, a mushy sense. In all seriousness, some of these greatest supporters, your greatest supporters, are going to be people that you want to get along with. These are people that you have things in common with, that appreciate you for who you are, and you don't get there by ignoring them. You don't build these relationships with people by cutting them out, by pretending they don't exist. You can't do that. I have met some of my subscribers in person, and let me tell you something. These are some of the nicest human beings I have ever met. And it's very important that you make sure that you acknowledge to them how much you appreciate the fact that they're so dedicated to your work. And that's going to be a big part of your day, is just interacting with these folks and getting to know them better. And when your channel starts growing, then you're going to start interacting with other communities. You're going to start wanting to do cross promotions with other people. And that's equally as important, because not only will that support your channel and help it grow, but it helps them and it helps you build a status. It helps you build alliances and partnerships that could last years. Working with people is important regardless of what medium you go through. The only other thing that you might do as a content creator is Twitch, and that's even more heavily relied on in terms of interaction with your viewers. Because those people are watching you in real time. Those people are asking you questions as you're playing, and they know you can see those questions. So if you choose to shun them or, tell them off, do you honestly think they're going to tune into your next stream? Absolutely not. Relationships and being able to work with people is a core standard for becoming a gamer in the YouTube or Twitch mainstream. If you don't do that, you will fail. These people, your supporters, as I said before, are your best friends. And the thing of it is, and one thing that you need to also understand, is if you want to get into this industry, because it is so dependent on viewership and people who watch your stuff, you also need to understand that not everyone who's going to watch your content is going to support you. Not all of them will. Some of them will mock you for it. Some of them will take a video that you spent days working on, and you're so proud of that video, and they'll openly tell you how terrible you are. They'll tell you to delete your channel, And you have to be careful about how you respond to them if you do, because if you respond at a negative standard, keep in mind, you are held to a different degree than just someone commenting on your video. If you become even remotely popular on YouTube, you're considered a figure. You're considered someone that people look towards for advice, someone that people go to for entertainment, but you have a lot of people who look at you and depend on you. And so if you come out and say something derogatory or something that flat out shouldn't be said on any public medium at all, period, that's going to reflect your future status. The number one YouTuber in the world right now is a guy named PewDiePie. He has over 50 million subscribers, and recently he posted a video, or was involved in a video, that had some seriously slurish content to it. I won't get into too many details. I really do try to keep things PG on this website. And instantly, Disney dropped him. They said, no, that is not acceptable. You can't do that. And he is going to lose subscribers and viewership over that. He may never recover from that. You may remember back in 2006, there was a gentleman who played Kramer on the hit show Seinfeld back in the 90s. I'm not sure of his real name off the top of my head. His first name is Michael. That's all I know. He made a comment during one of his stand-up routines at a comedy show, and that destroyed his career. And so you, as an individual, have to take that into context, and you have to be able to swallow your pride. You can't go out and attack other people. You need to be the bigger person, and not everyone can do that, because I will tell you right now, this happens every day. And some people do it because they have nothing better to do. Some people do it because they're jealous. Sometimes people do it because their lives are in a rut and this makes them feel better. I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying that I do understand it. And you will face these attacks. So when I say that working with people is an important thing, it is an important thing. And if you're not good at it now, you need to learn. That skill will not only carry you if you decide to do your own YouTube channel, but any job that you decide to take in your future. It is essential to the survival of any career that you have. To that end, if you find that you have trouble talking to people or working with people, there are a lot of great options for you out there. You can take a public speaking class. You can do group activities, community group activities, something to get you involved. You need to make sure that you're out there with other people. You need to be able to work with other people, because if you don't, you're not going to make it. Remember, your ideas may be great, but if you're not willing to listen to other people, they will not be willing to listen to you. So if you do decide to make your own YouTube channel or your own Twitch stream, I highly recommend it. It can be a very fun career. It can be a very rewarding career, but it is one where you will work hard to achieve your goal. But in order to get there first, you've got to start with the basics, and you need to start learning to work with people and supporting people just as they support you. That's an excellent question. Thank you for taking the time to ask that. And if you do decide to start your own channel, I really do wish you the best of luck. So guys and gals, that concludes today's Q&A. If you have a question for me, please leave it in the comment section below. Also, I have Twitter and Facebook. You can check out my links to the social media pages in the description below. I do want to take a second and just say thank you everyone who submitted a question today. We had some really good ones. Again, I'm really enjoying this, and as long as you guys are too, I will continue to do this on a weekly basis. So if you do like this stuff, be sure to share it with your friends, or if you want to troll them because it's April Fool's Day, send it to them anyway. And if you like my videos, please hit that subscribe button for more video game related content every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday right here on MythicTyrant.com. Don't forget about Q&A Saturdays, because that's where we are today. And of course, we have Sunday Fun Days. Thank you so much for watching, guys and gals. I hope you enjoyed today's video. And as always, I'm the Tyrant, signing off.